All right, crypto market updates. Looking at the Bitcoin. This is where it's at. This is what it's all about. Bitcoin. Is it gonna bounce? If it does, obviously everything's gonna fly with it. So, right now, this is something I pointed out yesterday. I didn't really have live charts going, predominantly because of internet cutting out, but this is what I'm looking at right now very closely. Right, see stochastic RSI down here. It's transition candle right here. Just like stochastic RSI down here. It's transition candle, this, these little hammer candles, just like right here. Right, and this is a 1 week charts, right? So you have this sell-off. You have like a week where it just kind of chops around but forms like a hammer candle. And then an explosive green, bullish engulfing candle, so on and so forth. This one started to bounce. It was a new high, but had to chop around some more and then popped up, so on and so forth. One thing that I wanted to actually point out that I've noticed in the markets is that bounce plays and the markets this year have kind of changed a little bit compared to other years, previous years, and I'll show you why. Right at the beginning of the year, so you see these bounce plays right here. Notice how it's several weeks of, not several weeks, yeah, a few weeks of some chop here. Lots of 1D candles of chopping around. Whereas like the first major drop, when we hit 6K, the bounce was instant. Yeah, hammer candles can also go down too. So here's an example of one that dropped right here, right? But it was kind of like a little bit mid-range, but dropped right here. It did have a bounce, but it dropped lower, right? So, all right, so like this bounce play, even though I traded this bounce play, this one wasn't really easy. This one was gritty. I had to wait a while. It's choppy. This was like the first major bounce play I saw like this on Bitcoin that was so gritty and choppy, right? And I'll show you why, right? This is 1 day, boom, bounce up. Check this out. 1 day, boom, bounced up. This one day, boom, bounced up. This one 1 day, boom, bounced up. This one 1 day, bounced up. 1 day, bounce, but slow climb, slow crawl up. Wasn't instant, but you still got the strong bounces. It was still showing a direction within a day. It didn't just drop and then grind sideways and then bounce up, right? Bounce 1 day. This right here was a little grittier before the bounce. Or was this 2016? Yeah, this is 2016. So this was a little bit grittier, right? Sold off. So this is probably like the last time, in previous years that I saw a gritty bounce. And then it kind of took a while, right? So right now, we don't know if we're going to bounce or not. But if we do, I would put it into gritty bounce category, right? As in like sells off, has an initial bounce, chops around at the lows. And then what I would look for is a green 1 day candle that takes out the prior resistance, right? I'd like to see this come to fruition by the week's close, at the very least, right? So I'd look for is a pop above this immediate resistance line. And then if that were to happen, there'll probably be a new set of traders jumping in from the sidelines here and probably building up a little bit of momentum, right? And obviously, if that were to happen, well, we know what happens with altcoins, right? They're just correlated right now. Bitcoin dumps, they dump. Bitcoin bounces a bit, they turn green on steroids. So at this point, I'm playing the waiting game. we might break down. There's no guarantees that this will hold up. And if it doesn't, then the 3K area, I think, is another major buy zone. Hopefully if it did break down, hopefully it would shoot down quickly, right? But we are seeing momentum, possibly like buyers starting to step in, momentum recharging for an upside swing. So we'll see. We'll see if this crosses and flips upwards. Now, one interesting thing that I want to talk about in relation to futures. So last December, the markets are at an interesting point of equilibrium, right? Looking at I like the 1 week stochastic RSI the best. The 1D's crossed over. It tends to cross over and under a little bit more, but it is showing kind of oversold conditions. One sec. I just got. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee a drop. The 1 week is usually what I look for the biggest bounces and the biggest moves, right? So we'll see if this bears any fruit, or if we have to break down and test a 3K area. Futures. So one thing I want to point out in relation to futures and also the equilibrium of the market. So December of this year is kind of like the exact polar opposite of December last year. December last year, the markets were out of balance. They were inefficient. We had extreme greed. Market sentiment was extreme greed. Now we're also inefficiently out of balance, and we have extreme fear. There's multiple levels of extreme fear in the market. There's fear of crypto dying, fear of crypto going to zero, fear of regulators crushing everything, fear of this, fear of that. There's just a lot of general fear in the markets, right? Obviously, with that also comes other emotions as well. But, it's these two polar opposite emotions that we have to contend with, either as traders, investors, and just the markets as a whole, market participants, is this constant flux and balance between fear and greed. Too much greed and one doesn't take profit, too much fear and one either, misses opportunities or, possibly sells at the bottom or whatever, right? So, or buys the top, right? Too much greed, buys the top, too much fear, sells the bottom. Not necessarily saying this is the bottom, but what I'm saying is that there definitely is two extremes. And in those two extremes, the markets have equilibrium, right? It's almost, I tweeted yesterday that it's almost kind of poetic, the equilibrium of the market right now. So what does that mean for 2019? Well, in my opinion, I think that the market's going to want to see probably more equilibrium in 2019. Whenever we do find a floor or bottom, this might be it. It might not. We'll only know in hindsight. I'm sure several years from now, we'll probably be looking back at the charts as an example. And then, we'll all have stories to tell. Oh, I remember this candle. I remember what it was like. I remember how market sentiment was like. I remember how I was feeling at the time, so on and so forth. Just like we could go back and look at, maybe the December highs, or if you're a veteran, you could probably look back and tell a story with multiple different candles and the news events and the fear or the drama or the FOMO or whatever that was revolved around this, right? But there's one thing we definitely know about the markets is that they're not linear. It's a bumpy ride. It's a roller coaster, right? It's a roller coaster. And, getting to point A to point B is more like, in crypto, is more like getting from point A to point Z. Meaning you probably have to go through the entire alphabet before you get to point Z, right? Instead of just straight lines type of thing, right? So, in relation to that, what's also interesting is occasionally we are seeing the odd altcoin market just decide to go batshit crazy for whatever reason. Maybe there's a fundamental catalyst. I didn't really look into it. But today, the shitcoin lottery for today or whatever is waves, right? It broke. Oops. Let's close this. Is waves, right? So we've been talking about for the past several months how many altcoins looked like they're in accumulation, right? Now accumulation, people might have certain ideas about what accumulation is or what it feels like or whatever. And like some folks, we might have a romantic idea that accumulation is like, oh, market's doing a little bit of sideways chop. Oh, it's an accumulation. No biggie. Looks like it's basing out. Easy trade. I'm just going to buy some and then we'll all sing Kumbaya and that's it. Boom. Simple, right? Not difficult. What's there, like, in hindsight, you could look at a chart, you could look at something like this, you could look at this and you could say, oh, this is easy. Look at that chart. Just buy down there and sell up here. What's there to think about? Any genius can do that, right? Anybody can do that. Simple, easy. Just buy down here and sell up here. What's there to think about? Easy, right? Are people having an easy time right now? Is the market easy right now? Does it feel easy? Buying stuff, accumulating, the chop, the grind, the capitulation, the sell-offs, the FUD. It always looks easy in hindsight. It really does. Like sometimes I'll show charts like, oh yeah, 2016, 2015, we did this, or 27, whatever, we did this, blah, blah, blah. It's never really easy. It really isn't. Right? Even in 2015, people could look back at Bitcoin and say, oh, easy. Come on. I mean, who wouldn't be buying Bitcoin at $200 to $300? Right? I mean, any idiot could just see that Bitcoin was in accumulation and you just buy it at $200 to $300. No biggie, right? Hindsight's always 2020. And then we'll look back and say, oh man, I wish I was there in 2015 when it was like the most opportune time. And I'm not necessarily saying that it can drop low or anything like that. Right? Obviously we know it can. But people say they wish they were back in 2015 and it was so easy. But I'll tell you, from anybody here, was anybody around in 2015? I know we have some folks in the room. Like, I don't, even though I was like really, really bullish and had vision in 2015 and was, actively accumulating and really literally just dedicating my life to getting some Bitcoin, to getting some crypto. It wasn't easy. It really wasn't. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. By the time we got to this point, by the time we got like, here, after like 11 months of this like chop and like a second capitulation and like Bitfinex glitching out, all that stuff. By the time we got here, like you literally just want to quit. You're literally like, what? You just start to question yourself, right? And I don't know if anybody's ever read the, seen that story from Think and Grow Rich, 3 Feet to Gold or something like that. But basically, the story or the lesson is someone found some gold. So then they raised all this money and started a gold mine and started to, dig for gold. And then they couldn't find any more gold. That was it. They couldn't find any more gold at all. And then they quit. They threw in the towel. So they capitulated the gold mining business and sold it to someone for pennies on the dollar. That person who bought it for pennies on the dollar hired a geologist, and basically their mine was only 3 feet away from one of the largest gold mines in history, right? And then that person who bought it for pennies on the dollar made a fortune. And so the lesson of the story is the person who originally started the mine had the right idea, but quit 3 feet to gold. Now, just because I say all of this or whatever doesn't mean that anything's guaranteed in the market. Doesn't mean that if we, duke it out in the market and have patience and perseverance that we're owed anything or that we're going to get vastly rewarded or anything. None of that stuff is guaranteed. I mean, the thing is, we always say hindsight's 20/20, but the thing is like when you're on the bleeding edge, there's never really any guarantees. You're always on the bleeding edge, right? But there's also something else to crypto that is kind of unique to other markets. Crypto isn't just about speculation. It's not just about, buy low, sell high. It's not just about trading or investing or any of that stuff. Crypto can be a passive experience. One can be a passive investor, but one can also be an active participant in the industry. It's also a revolution. It's revolutionizing money. It's revolutionizing technology and finance. Yes, it's got a lot of skeletons in its closet. Yes, it's got a lot of scams and all this stuff, but also has a lot of good things. And when we're at the lows, people just tend to focus on the scams. They just tend to focus, like people want pitchforks and they want to throw stones at shit. So it's low-hanging fruit to hate on the 2017 ICOs or this and that, right? Or to hate on altcoins, or to hate on Bitcoin, or to hate whatever it is that people are hating on. Like this is also emotions in the market cycles. But the thing is that the only thing that derives, this is the one thing that's like unique about the fundamentals of Bitcoin and crypto. And I'm kind of talking a bit on a philosophical note here as far as this, because I feel like at this point in the market, the most important thing is really the mental and emotional game at this point in the market, right? Just like the same when we were up in the highs, right? We had to have temperance of our greed. We had to keep our greed in check. We had to be cautious. Right now, extreme fear is the predominant emotion. So if we can learn anything from all of this, from experience, from market cycles, from crypto market sentiment in general, it's to put fear in check, to not be overcome by fear, right? And ultimately, the thing is like the only thing, the biggest fundamental value, like we could ask, okay, where does Bitcoin get its fundamentals from? What is its fundamental value ultimately? Like, sure, it's got the technology, it's got the decentralized ledger, it's got all that great stuff. First time in history we've seen anything like that. So it's a new paradigm. That's obviously, and then we've got supply and demand dynamics as far as the price and the value, so on and so forth. But none of that stuff actually that's not even really the core of where it gets its value. It gets its value from us, right? It gets its value from us. It gets its value from the market participants. It gets its value from the community, right? Where does anything, let's just look at the core and the root of anything. Where does anything get its value from, right? Nothing in the economy is an island, right? As in nobody can get rich or make money or have value without the participation of other members in society, right? Imagine if you lived on a private island and you had like 100 tons of gold, right? You have 100 tons of gold, but you're on your island by yourself. Well, what's your gold worth? Right? Or imagine you're the only person in the world and you have all this gold. What's it worth? It's not worth anything. It's worth whatever it's worth to you, right? But that could be arbitrary. You could have a pet rock that you feel is worth more than gold or whatever. And so all this is just arbitrary. So essentially we derive its value because a society of people have gone together and have decided that we come to an agreement. This is what price discovery is, and this is what a market is. We come to an agreement of what its value is, where it derives its value from. Art. We say, oh, this painting is worth $40 million, but that painting's worth $40. Well, why is that? Well, maybe there's some partial marketing there, but also, a group of people, maybe a group of people with some money got together and decided that this painting would be worth $40 million. Why would someone pay $100,000 for digital land on Mana or Decentraland or whatever? Or why would someone pay six figures for like a crypto kitty, a cartoon kitty on a blockchain, that really in reality doesn't really even have any value, doesn't really do anything. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros that are pixelated in cartoon form on a blockchain, like, because people have decided that it had that value. There was a market there. People were willing to buy and spend that, right? And so as a result of crypto being, based on community value and so on and so forth, and now it's pushing more and more into the mainstream, the perceived value and the price discovery is in a much wider pool of people, right? Like there's about 1 million people who are subscribed to the Bitcoin subreddit. I think there's, it'd be safe to say that maybe there's at least 10 million crypto users, or maybe even double that, of people who at least have a little bit of it, so on and so forth. So its value, and there's a lot of businesses around it, so its value is more global, right? It's more based on global liquidity and so on and so forth. Whereas like in the early days of Bitcoin, imagine like 2010, 2011, maybe even 2012, maybe you had less than like 1 million people. Like maybe it was just like, in 2010, it was probably just a few thousand people at most, right? And as more people came into it, its value started to grow because it's a scarce digital resource, right? So its value grew. But the interesting thing from crypto is that, how did it get to this point? How did some obscure, experimental, decentralized currency, fringe magical internet money that a couple of hackers and nerds were getting together to experiment, some cypherpunks, how did that turn into a multi-billion-dollar market cap and get listed on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange and how did it get to where we are today? Right? It almost hit $1 trillion market cap. It didn't quite, but it almost did, right? We were getting there. We were on our way in that parabolic advance, right? How did it get there? Well, it took a lot of vision. It took a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears from early founders and members and of creating value. People building businesses around crypto, building websites, marketing it, talking about it to other people, letting people know. It's not like it just spread itself. It was people who are active participants, right? Also, yes, and then also other things, right? Like it was created as a result of problems that we've seen in mainstream finance. Came after the 2008 financial meltdown. I think the Central Bank of Europe recently said that they called Bitcoin the evil spawn of the 2008 crisis. And I almost kind of view that as like a badge of honor, or I view that as it's like almost like a compliment, right? It's like, wow, this was the evil spawn of the financial meltdown, financial meltdown caused by toxic debt that the banks created themselves, right? And literally wiped out many people out of their houses and so on and so forth, right? Caused a lot of suffering, right? So obviously, technology creates solutions and so on and so forth. And it just it's not to say that crypto and Bitcoin or anything like that will necessarily replace, I don't necessarily think it's going to replace banking or traditional finance or anything like that. I think there's going to be some symbiosis. Obviously, anything that goes into the mainstream, it has to kind of live in both worlds. But it's a plan B. It's another option, right? It just gives people another option. And in some places like Venezuela or whatever, maybe for us, we speculate and maybe the speculation, maybe you gain some money out of it and it changes the quality of our life. But, let's say it doesn't, so on and so forth. It might not necessarily be life or death, but for some people, where there's hyperinflation like Venezuela or Iran or any of these places in the world where they've lost confidence in their currency, and where they're controlled under strict capital controls, where they're basically left holding the bag. Like, yeah, Bitcoin and crypto is volatile and it's a wild jungle, it's a wild west, but it's another option. And obviously if you choose that option at the right time, it could actually pay off versus losing, right? Obviously everything's about market timing. I would also say that crypto is one of the, in my opinions, I think it's one of the purest markets that exists. It's 24/7. There's no circuit breakers. Price discovery is off multiple different exchanges. And there's not really a lot of markets like that in the world, right? Usually, you know, for a lot of stocks, you have just a couple of markets, right? You've got New York Stock Exchange, you've got NASDAQ, maybe you've got the Intercontinental Exchange, maybe you have local exchanges in local countries like, you know, Shanghai Stock Exchange and so on and so forth. But these just tend to be just a couple of exchanges that lead the majority of price discovery, with 8-hour days, circuit breakers, weekends, holidays, lots of rules around what can and cannot be done. Whereas like crypto and Bitcoin is just kind of like, it's just like a free market, free for all. Anything goes 24/7, no circuit breakers. I mean, obviously as traders and stuff, it can get a little bit tiring. Yeah, and you do have Forex. You do have Forex, which is 24/7. So it certainly can get a little bit tiring, right? I mean, sometimes I think it'd be nice to have weekends and whatever, right? In crypto, obviously, when the markets are quiet, that's fine. But if you ever go to try to take a holiday or something, good luck with that, right? Anyways, long-winded rant. But my whole point in this is that one can create value, right? In my opinion, I'm just going to say this, in my opinion, I think the best time to create value and to create businesses in crypto is during bear seasons, is when the market's like this or like this, right? There's a big common problem we saw last year. Everybody remember when crypto exchanges were having a hard time with signups? They actually had to close doors. Their trading engines were freezing. They were, they like businesses were just unable to meet demand. They were not prepared for it, so on and so forth, right? Now imagine trying to start your business, your crypto business or whatever. And yeah, people were selling trading accounts. Imagine that, right? It just took so long and it was so slow and everything was congested. It was really bottlenecked. So imagine trying to build a business in this, right? In my opinion, the best time to build businesses around the industry or the space, or to try to create value, whether you're a developer, whether you want to set up mining, whether you want to do some kind of a wallet or anything like that, right? There's still ample opportunity, in my opinion, in crypto. I believe the best time to do it is in the quiet, when everyone's like, oh, it's dead, it's not going anywhere, blah blah. That's the best time to focus on building business. I remember when BitMEX was like a nothing exchange in 2015, right? I even talked to Arthur on Skype, right? And I didn't even have the following I have now or anything like that. That's how accessible people were back then, right? So I have him on my Skype, but I remember talking with him back in 2015, and it was just like a small exchange, right? Like it's a new kind of fringe-ish, futures exchange, right? And now they're pushing like the most volume. They're like kings of the jungle now, right? So it's come a long way, but that business was I don't know if I'd be able to talk to him nowadays, right? And I'm sure like people who started businesses like that, or like the person who started Coinbase, right? He's like a billionaire now, right? So my whole point in all this, aside from, I know we talk about trading and investing a lot, but there's also other opportunities in the space as well, around development, around, creating startups, all that kind of stuff. Now, the thing is like, you're not going to get the free lunch that we had in 2016 and the beginning of 2017 with ICOs, right? New businesses coming forward into the space are actually going to have to do what traditional businesses have done. They're going to have a solid business plan and so on and so forth. And they're probably going to have to raise money traditional round with real equity instead of just selling some tokens, so on and so forth, right? So, all right. So that's that. Just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a side rant and my experience and all of this and my thoughts as far as the market cycles and so on and so forth. So there's a question in relation to whether or not Tezos can continue to drop in market cap. It's certainly possible. Anything certainly is possible. And I did see a tweet or comment, and I do respect the person who made that comment. They do a lot of mining and so on and so forth, that the market cap was too high and that they would want to buy it, when it hits 5-digit. What was it? 5-digit what was the market cap? How many digits? 5-digit? Okay, so 5-digit market cap, 10,000, 40,000, 90,000, something like that. Below $100,000 market cap, basically turning it into a micro cap. In my opinion, I think that's just like over exuberant bearishness. It kind of fits in line perfectly with market sentiment right now. It's very cool and trendy and popular to think things are just going to die into oblivion. To me, that's like equivalent to someone saying, oh, ETH is going to go to zero, right? Could they have handled the post ICO and all that stuff better? Were there mistakes and hiccups? Yes, absolutely, right? But why did I highly doubt, obviously I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, well, I stand to lose a lot of money, and I'm certainly going to feel the pinch from that. But in my opinion, Tezos is actually one of the most well capitalized crypto projects in the space, right? They have more money right now than any of these. Also, all these like Mickey Mouse microcap bullshit coins and tokens that everyone's shilling. These 5-digit microcap coins that people are shilling and that they're accumulating that have no liquidity and what. These projects have no funding at all. They have no funding. They're absolute shit coins, right? They don't have a war chest for anything, right? How can you build a business and an ecosystem if you hardly have any funding? You know why they're 5-digit market caps? Because they don't have any funding. They're like these Mickey Mouse shit coins, right? Either they had really, really tiny ICOs, or they're just like these proof of work coins that don't really have any funding, or maybe they have a little pre-mine or something like that. But think of crypto projects even like a business, right? The more money one has in their war chest, the more they're going to be able to do with that, part of the success of Ethereum. Like, I remember once upon a time, Ethereum in 2015, Vitalik wrote a post or whatever, said, oh, we're kind of running out of funds. They burned so much of their funds. But then when the price of Ethereum started to rise, suddenly they're like, oh, we have funds for many, many years to come now because of the rise in price. And then obviously when it went nuts, those funds increased exponentially, and it's a very, very well-funded project, right? Tezos still has a $200+ million war chest to work with. This money is all going towards developer grants and business grants and stuff. It's all going in towards strengthening and building the decentralized community. So for it to like drop to 5-digit market cap means that it would be some non-funded illiquid shitcoin. Like, they've got better funding than almost most other crypto projects right now. I can't even think about any other crypto project. Maybe EOS raised more money, right? Obviously EOS did, but we don't know how much of that money was real in EOS. A lot of this money in EOS and the ICO could have been recycled. They could have, like, because you were able, because it was a year-long ICO and you were able to withdraw and put it on exchange and then buy ETH from the exchange. There's actually no actual audit or any proof that the people who started EOS didn't just take the exact same ETH and kept cycling it over and over. Imagine you had like 10,000 ETH and you just kept putting it in, buying more EOS, putting the exchange, selling it, getting more ETH, just keep doing that. You're basically trading one hand to the other. We don't know this for sure. There's no evidence of it, but there's no evidence that that didn't happen. So basically, like, imagine you do a year-long ICO with EOS. You've got 10,000 ETH in your left hand, and then you've got the EOS in the right hand that gets created. You take your own 10,000 ETH, you switch it into your right hand, and then you create more EOS and you flip it into your left. Well, where does that 10,000 ETH go? It just goes back into your own hand because it went to you because you're the one doing the ICO. So who's to say that they didn't take that ETH, put it on the exchange to mix and obfuscate the paper trail, and then take that exact same 10,000 ETH, put it back into EOS, buy more EOS, and just kept doing that over and over and over again. So we don't actually know if they did a $1 billion ICO or not. There's no real audit trail or any evidence of that either way. There's actually been some analysis that I read, an interesting post and some analysis where they were tracking the price, tracking the Ethereum and EOS as going back and forth, and there was a lot of it going back and forth from Bitfinex. So there might have been, so I almost see that as like wash sale ICO, right? Where you could probably take your own coins and just keep getting more and more EOS with the same Ethereum. Like, they were one of the few ICOs that did a year, like, I think they're the only ones that did a year-long ICO, and I think they were the only ones that allowed people to withdraw and their own funds before the ICO was done, and allow people to withdraw their EOS and trade on a secondary market before the ICO is complete. So, there's, in my opinion, there's a lot of fishy stuff. So we don't even know if this was the biggest ICO. If it wasn't the biggest ICO, in my opinion, I believe that Tezos was the largest. I believe that they've raised the most money, right? It also has an extremely unique value proposition on a fundamental note. Could it go down lower? It certainly can, right? Right now, like I said, what I said yesterday is that on a fundamental note, price is also kind of sometimes based on supply and demand. And sometimes price is just caused by straight up whales pumping, right? Insiders, whales who are in with the project, or maybe they get an exchange listing and it gets pumped, or this and this and that. There's a few things that I know. I know that for the most part, I don't get the sense, I don't get the sense that the developers or the people in Tezos are just pumpers, that they're in it for the quick pump. One commonality that I see amongst that crew is they seem to be very, very focused on, development and just building, right? So still in the building phase. I mean, the network's it's still in price discovery too, because all that price discovery from HitBTC wasn't real. It wasn't based on real supply and demand, right? Someone's saying we hate to interrupt this for potential flash crash on ETC. Okay, someone's saying there's a flash crash on ETC. Wow. Wow, someone flash crashed this right down to 8 cents. See this whoa, look at that volume. So yeah, there's some drama around ETC. One of the main devs quit. There's some drama around the development or whatnot. So I think maybe some whale just capitulated. But geez, this is what I talk about. Like just like, and yeah, they don't have any funding, and they're having a hard time with funding and stuff, right? So this is what I'm talking about, right? About having stink bids, like really low stink bids. Like imagine if you just, I don't think it'll ever hit 20 cents, but imagine you just had something down there and then it bounces back and you're like, oh wow, that low order's up 2,000% in an hour. It's just absolute instant, right? Instant profit. Obviously, it's kind of like winning a lottery, which one? But yeah, so in my opinion, obviously, I could be wrong. Nothing's guaranteed. Nothing's ever guaranteed in the markets. Nothing's ever guaranteed in crypto. We're always on the bleeding edge of uncertainty. You know, we're always having to manage risk to reward when it comes to crypto in general. And it's often a bumpy ride. But every now and again, I gotta place my chips on the table. I gotta make moves, right? And you know, so I picked my picks that I want to accumulate, that I think are going to be good plays for the next cycle, that I think will be around for the next cycle. It's certainly possible Tezos could drop more in market cap, but I think 5 digits, as much as I respect the person who posted that, I think is definitely over exuberant bearishness. And who knows, maybe that person has some bids they want to fill, right? There's just some projects that generally, you know, start off as higher projects, higher tiered projects, and end up staying higher tiered projects, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, obviously. So that is Tezos, and then so just my a recap on my game plan in relation to this. So I'm obviously at this point in the market, especially with Tezos, I'm definitely feeling the pinch and the bear market. You know, like I've done fairly well most of the year, but I'm definitely feeling a bit of a pinch here, having bought a little bit. I should have just I got a little too eager over in this range, and if I'd saved some of that ammo, I'd be a very, very happy camper to see ICO prices or whatnot. That said, I have been buying down in the lows as well, and my next largest order is, I'm not saying we'll get this low, but I'm not just gonna like start buying a ton at this level, because if we did drop lower, if we don't and we just have a nice bounce and we go wherever, then you know we'll all sing kumbaya and it'll all be gravy. But I'm saving a tranche of money specifically for if it ever tags 20 cents or lower, then I'll actually double my entire holdings. I'll double my entire XTZ holdings, which will actually be a lot more Tezos than I originally intended to buy. But at this point, I'm kind of committed to my accumulation goals and to accumulating this and to accumulating these coins for the next market cycle. Hell or high water, thick or thin, so on and so forth. Still a very, very new ecosystem. Network's only been around for a few months, right? A few months of live network since, you know, October, whenever it got listed. And it's still very much in building mode, right? They're still building stuff out. It's new, right? These things take time. It's not instant. We can't necessarily expect instant gratification, right? Now, that might not necessarily be the best path for everyone. This is just something that I think is a good idea, and that I believe in the project. I like the project. I have other motivations behind the project, such as having been around in crypto and seeing that governance is a major, major problem. It's been a huge problem that I've saw in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And smart contract bugs. How many times have we seen these multi-million-dollar debacles in Ethereum? It's literally, in my opinion, on a fundamental note, and I don't want to sound like some kind of crypto Kool-Aid drinker or whatever, you know, like a real community member with my community member certification and Tezos neck tattoos and stuff, right? But on a fundamental note, I actually really see a niche and a need for those two things being solved. Those are the biggest problems that I just saw plaguing crypto. And it was just, in my opinion, it was just, yeah, I do have the Tezos neck tattoo. If it goes any lower, I'm going to have the face tattoo. I'm going to get it on my forehead and maybe a little XTZ under my eye. And I'm going to make Tezos mumble rap to preach it to the masses and all that stuff. No, but on a serious note, literally the biggest dramas, the biggest problems that I saw in the past several years, the past 4 years, has been governance and bugs in smart contracts. And the governance problem has just absolutely been disgusting, seeing the drama, right? That's the one thing that kind of almost made me kind of sick of crypto in a sense, is just so much infighting amongst developers and the community and everything. And the fact that this project actually addressed it in its white paper in 2014, before those governance problems even arise, actually shows foresight, right? This is a project where the white paper came out 4 years ago, right? Similar with Zcash. I think the white paper came out at Zcash in like 2013, or I don't know when it was, maybe even before then. But Hal Finney, which some people suspect was Satoshi, was actually following the Zcash project in the early days, right? It's one of those really old school crypto projects that just took many years to launch and does offer some interesting stuff. Speaking of which, there's a very, very high probability, because I saw on this GitHub and I mentioned this earlier, there's a very, very high probability that Tezos will also turn into a privacy coin, because they are integrating Z-Snarks, and I know Arthur was very clear about that for years. He wanted to do that. Obviously, it'll probably be like a voting process, but I think a lot of people would be keen on that. So this like self-amending ledger has the ability to take all the best features of every other blockchain and integrate it. Just kind of absorb them and integrate all the best features of anything into it at the core protocol level. First time that's ever happened. So it's very new and experimental. But anyways, so those are obviously, everyone knows the fundamental reasons why I like the project. That said, though, you can't escape market cycles. You can't escape the extreme correlation with Bitcoin. And it doesn't matter how good one thinks a project is fundamentally, market cycles and correlation dominate these markets right now. There's no getting around that at this point. Maybe when the markets mature, we might have mixed correlation. But right now, it doesn't matter, right? You could pick the absolute best altcoin projects and think, oh, this one's so good and that one's so good, and this one's got some tech updates and this and that, blah blah blah, and this one's the future and yada yada yada. It doesn't make a shit difference. If Bitcoin dumps, they're going in the gutter. It's that simple. It's that simple. You know, fundamentals didn't mean crap all of 2018 for this bear market, right? But where the fundamentals come into play, in my opinion, are the longer term, for the next market cycle. Is this project going to survive? Will it die? Right? That's where it comes in. If it survives, then guess what? What happens when Bitcoin breaks all-time highs? What happens when Bitcoin starts a new cycle? Everything rises with it, right? Like stuff that was literally survived but looked absolutely completely dead for years suddenly broke all new like Litecoin or BitShares broke new all-time highs, right? Here's a project that for years, you want to talk about a multi-year bear trend. Let's talk about BitShares. You know, look at this bear channel. Right? Man, now that's a long bear channel. And Bitcoin was bullish during this. Bitcoin wasn't even a bear trend during this sell-off. Right? This was just this bear channel was, 193 days of bear channel on BitShares. But as soon as Bitcoin started to break the all-time highs and altcoins start to go parabolic, this is when we saw markets go nuts, so on and so forth, right? And this is a project where the lead developer left it to move on to other projects, right? Anyways, so it's pretty much just, overall market cycles. Waves is going to be interesting to watch. Just like out of nowhere within the past, let's just look at the weekly candle here. Within the past 2 weeks, this coin has gone up 100, and on the BTC chart has gone up 128% just in a couple weeks out of nowhere. where it looked dead, right? So I was talking about this. I'm coming back full cycle. So I was talking about this, right? Looks easy. Oh, so easy. Oh, just, yeah, no problem. Just buy it when it's in the gutter. Buy it when it looks, goes sideways in accumulation. And then pop. There you go. And then sell when it goes parabolic, right? Super, super easy. Well, we talked about how a lot of altcoins looked like they were in accumulation. We've been talking about it for months. And then things dropped lower and bled out more. And then it looked like maybe that was invalidated. Except when you start to see some altcoin projects pop off. So when you look at something like this in waves, you ask yourself, was it in accumulation? Because we always talk about how hindsight is 2020, how it's always easier in hindsight than when you're on the bleeding edge. Well, waves was on the bleeding edge and looked like it was pretty dead, right? And now it popped up, it broke out of the range. Nice fat green candles. We haven't seen nice green candles like this in a while, since since stuff like this, or maybe even some of the green candles here, so on and so forth. But now we could look back at waves now that broke out of that range, and we could say, oh yeah, okay, accumulation confirmed, right? Let's look at on the dollar charts. I know it probably took a beating. It probably went to a new low on the dollar charts. It did. Look at this. So it was all sideways accumulation on the BTC chart, but then it capitulated and dropped a new low, right? So imagine you're like, okay, I think it's an accumulation. You buy some here, and then it bleeds with everything else. And the next thing you know, this bloody coin, even though one's like, okay, it's an accumulation, I'm going to buy a dip. Maybe, if you bought it anywhere up higher, then it would be even worse. But let's say you just like, yeah, I bought the dip right here on this candle, and next thing you know, the bloody thing drops 52%, and then it starts breaking out over the course of like a week or so. And then from that point, now it's up 50%. So, these markets are volatile. These markets will cause traders and investors the most amount of pain. Whether you're in a bull trend or a bear trend, these crypto markets will still try to cause you pain. It's just different pain. In a bull trend, the pain was, oh, I sold it too soon. Oh, the pain of opportunity cost. I mean, unless you're out chasing and buying tops in the bull market, you could have just bought lots of tops and been dumped on even in bull markets, right? But oftentimes the biggest pain that I saw was, oh, I didn't ride my position long enough. Opportunity costs around that. And then the bull market is, oh, I thought that dip was the bottom and it dropped lower, and now it's in the red more, right? So obviously, even in the peak of the bull market, obviously if someone was chasing tops and they didn't know what they were doing, and they're just like, oh, Ripple's so bullish, and they buy here, and then literally in like one day it drops like 50% from where you bought in a single day, type of thing. Well, obviously one could experience drawdown pain even in a bull market, right? So you say, oh, everyone's a genius in a bull market. Well, not everyone made money in the bull market, right? And some people still bought high in the bull market and got dumped on. Some people sold too soon in the bull market. Some people didn't sell at all. Some people did a really good job of riding it from like half a penny to $4, and they didn't take any profit at all. And now it's like things did full retraces and stuff, right? It's like bull market, bear market, and like even when you're on the bull market, you're still on the bleeding edge. You still don't know necessarily like how it's all gonna roll out, right? So you're always on the bleeding edge. Even with Bitcoin, every single dump that Bitcoin had over the years was always the bleeding edge, right? So these markets definitely will test you. It will test your resolve, it will test your patience, it will test your perseverance, it'll test all those things. Over the past, having lived through this entire cycle, it was not an easy ride. It was not a clear, smooth ride. It was a very, very bumpy ride with a lot of FUD along the way, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. All that stuff. All of it. Right? So none of that is new. This is all, none of this, what we're experiencing, none of this is new, what we're experiencing right now. Could it go lower? Yes. Could it drag on? Could it chop out? Could it go into a year-long accumulation or whatever and chop around? Yes. Could it reverse very quickly and bounce in people's faces and go into a bull trend out of nowhere? Yes, that can happen too. Any of those things are possible, but I also keep things very, very simple. You know, I've deduced everything to very, very simple two-dimensional strategy, which is just buy low, sell high, buy as low as you can, buy as cheap as I can, sell it as high as I can. Obviously, it's never perfect. Obviously, with selling, it's good to scale out incrementally in the bull trend, take out hard profit. And the same thing is like, same thing with buying low, scale in incrementally, right? Like average down or pyramid traded up if it starts to bounce or whatnot, right? Scale in, scale out, scale in, scale out. It's the middle path. No one's going to pick the exact bottom and sell the exact top, you know, not unless they're in a fantasy world or whatever. Some people might. I mean, Satoshi Light, Charlie Lee did a pretty damn good job at selling the top, and I think he predicted $20 Bitcoin, $20 Litecoin, and you know, maybe even without trying, he's traded better than most people, because almost like it's in the 20s, so that's pretty damn good. But you know, he's lived through the last Litecoin bubble, right? And I remember watching Charlie average down and buy at like $4 on Litecoin, right? When it seemed dead, all that stuff. He was buying it in droves, and obviously he made really, really good money recognizing the parabola and selling at the top and so on and so forth, right? So let's see if we can close out a nice green candle here. If we can at least break this, take this out. This can cross, if we can get some momentum. You know, at least a bounce to 5K or you know, mid fives would be nice. Could be a good opportunity to do some bag readjustments or whatnot. If not, I think that if we did break down, if this did turn into like a bear pennant or whatnot, then I think the 3K area would be a major area, and it probably would wick down relatively quickly if it did. So we don't have that much. How long would it take? Like from the bottom to here, looking at like, let's say another 20% or whatnot. So we'll see how this all plays out. Obviously, keeping my eyes open for more activity amongst altcoins similar to waves, right? That's the popcorn effect that I want to see. I want to see some strength. I want to see some counterforce. The markets are out of balance right now. They're inefficiently out of balance. Everything is an extreme to the bear side. Everything is an extreme emotionally and on the price charts to the bear side. It doesn't mean that there's going to be instant recovery, but all I know is that we are out of balance and that the markets will look for equilibrium, just like up here. So this is almost like the yin and yang of the market we're experiencing right now. December 2017, December 2018 is kind of symmetry. The symmetry is poetic. And well, one thing